It's time to take a look at the top 10 free-to-play games on Steam in December 2021. These are awesome games of multiple different genres and topics that have some really fun gameplay that's definitely worth trying out. Without further ado, let's jump into the list. Number 10, Century Age of Ashes. This is a really awesome free-to-play multiplayer dragon battle game, an awesome fantasy RPG style game where you can have a growing roster of different classes and dragons to compete with in intense arena battles and fly through the skies in aerial combat against other players in PvP mode. This is a really awesome looking game which is super unique to a lot of other games I've seen. There's a lot of different dragon types and wyverns that you can fly around with, and the graphics are pretty breathtaking. The game has a fairly strong anti-cheat, meaning it should have some pretty fair gameplay, and it feels really awesome swooping around at fast paces through the skies. Of course, you're not just fighting with a dragon, you do have a dragon rider on the back of it, so it's kind of just like horse racing but in a fantasy medieval age. You have special abilities like cloaking yourself and going invisible, shooting fireballs, and there's some really awesome different game types and modes that you can play with as you chase other players and fight at extremely fast paces. Number 9, Bloons TD Battles 2. Now this game is from the original creators of Bloons Tower Defense 6, and it's a game which is a brand new installment of this head-to-head tower defense game franchise where you pick a hero, choose a team of powerful different players, and prepare to battle one-on-one against other players with huge relentless waves in combat. This is a pretty awesome game which was quite fun for me to try out because I'm usually not the type of person to play these sort of 2D top-down style games, although I found it pretty fun. For anyone who likes idle games to play in spare time when they're multitasking, or just simple games that run on basically any machine or a toaster, then this one is definitely one which you can pick up and try out in your spare time if you just want something simple to do. You can choose from a mirage of different classes of monkeys to defend your base with and plot them around the map and basically pop all the balloons and complete all the levels. This is a really simple basic game with a really simple underlying tone to it, but it's actually pretty fun, and if you enjoy the old school flash style games with simple cartoon graphics, this is pretty fun as a general throwback to get that same sort of old school feeling. Number 8, Russian Fishing 4. This is a surprisingly really high quality game which I actually had a pleasure to play. This runs on a lot of different systems and it's not too demanding. It ran really well on my gaming laptop. On the surface it may seem like a joke or maybe a game which is not worth touching, but in fact it's actually really fun. It's a fishing simulator which has some RPG elements scattered throughout. There's no particular storyline and the whole process of the game is based more on the concept of an open world free to roam, free to play experience. It's actually really fun and the game can also get quite complex, so it's pretty important to actually run through the tutorial and make sure you enable and follow the tooltips to learn how to actually play the game. There's some really awesome open world large scale maps which look really impressive and have extremely good graphics, and it's actually really fun to play. You can buy different things from the shops and stores in game and choose from a different collection of baits, fishing rods and other equipment to actually fish with. You can even ride along lakes and rivers in boats and explore different maps and different places throughout the in-game world. Number 7, Crab Game. So for anyone who loves Squid Game, the popular show on Netflix from Korea, which was released a few months ago to huge hype and popularity, then maybe playing Crab Game is something which will excite you or make you have a lot of fun. It's basically a first-person multiplayer game where you'll play through several different mini-games which are based upon children's games until only one player stands victorious. Think of it as basically like a battle royale game, but without all of the shooting and mayhem which most of these typical titles have. This game, obviously being based off Squid Game, has a lot of similar features and a lot of the different in-game mini-games from that particular show, although the creator has actually chosen to employ and implement a few different childhood games and their own mini-games which are not actually featured in the show. But if you like the show and that's what you're trying to recreate, you'll see a lot of the games from the hit Netflix TV show, like jumping along the glass platforms and hoping they don't break underneath your feet. This is an extremely fun game to play with friends, and it's made in the Unity engine. It's actually the popular project of a large YouTuber called Danny, and it was released on Steam and a lot of people have really enjoyed it. Number 6, SCP Containment Breach Multiplayer. This is a game which simulates the same feeling which I got from playing Gary's Mod SCP Roleplay on Dark RP mode. It's basically a fully fledged game which immerses you in the exact same experience. It's a free multiplayer survival horror game which is based from the stories from the SCP Foundation's wiki page. The game is basically about a facility which contains anomalous entities known as SCPs. If you're invested in the SCP lore and story, perhaps this is really interesting to you and you're familiar with all the material. Basically, when a catastrophic containment breach occurs at a facility, your goal is to get out of it and try to escape with your friends. It's actually a really gripping horror experience with fairly decent graphics and some really well designed maps. If you play Gmod SCP roleplay, this has the same feeling like I mentioned before, but in its own standalone game title, and you'll see a lot of the more popular SCP entities from the SCP storylines. You'll basically perform as one of the inmates or test subjects in the SCP containment breach storyline, and you'll go against some pretty big feats and tasks which you'll have to conquer throughout a huge large facility. Number 5, Cell to Singularity, Evolution Never Ends. This is the epic story of evolution, technology, humanity, and dinosaurs, and it's all yours to tap into and basically control the whole simulation yourself. This is a pretty slow-paced game, but it was actually extremely addicting for me to play over the course of around 1 week. When I was on holiday, I was playing this a ton on my laptop. It's extremely easy to run, it's a really simple game, and it's basically one of those idle genre games which I covered earlier in the video, where you can just kind of passively play it as you're on your computer or open it in another screen or monitor and kind of just play it throughout the day. It's a game which is basically set over 4.5 billion years ago when no life was in the solar system, and then in the blink of an eye on the geological timescale, everything changed. From the beginning, you'll go through ages like the age of the dinosaurs and try and advance from the current age to the future by basically developing different species and gathering different points. It's basically a cookie clicker or adventure capitalist type game, but embodied into the whole universe style theme. Number 4, Muck. This is a survival roguelike game in which you'll be collecting resources, finding items, and building a base to survive in the world as long as you possibly can. And not only do you have to play this in single player mode, you can also play it with friends too. It's an extremely amusing game with some hilarious comedy elements to it, simple graphics, and a humble gameplay experience, which is actually super fun and a little bit unique. It's a really refreshing game, and it's by the exact same creator who brought you the Crab Game title, which I featured a little earlier in this list. You're basically trapped in the muck on an island, either alone or with your friends, and you have to survive as long as possible by using all the resources which you're going to find around the island. You can collect resources, craft tools, weapons and armor, find items, and build your base during the day, but there's going to be a few different challenges and risks and dangers along the way. Once night falls, mysterious enemies will pop up from the shadows, and you'll have to use everything which you've gathered or crafted during the day to make it through the nighttime, which is extremely unforgiving. This is a fun and action-packed experience, and the island you'll be spawning and playing on is procedurally generated, making it fairly unique. There's crafting, building, PvP co-op, many unique power-ups, and much more in this game, which makes it a pretty fun title. It was a project which was made in an extremely short time period, and then extra features were added over time. It's a really nice game which is worth giving a try, and there's some really awesome fun bosses in there which are just hilarious and also a little bit overly hard to defeat, especially if you're playing solo. Number 3, Sven Co-op. Now, who doesn't want to experience the old classical Half-Life game and all of its expansions, as well as a whole bunch of custom campaigns and material, online cooperative with friends or random players, instead of having to dredge through it all yourself? I'm sure me included, and most of you watching the video, have probably completed the original Half-Life, which is an amazing game, but experiencing it with other players in a completely different game mode or game type just feels so much different, and it feels so much more fun. Sven Co-op is a cooperative game originally based around Valve Software's Half-Life. In this game, you basically work together with other players against computer-controlled AI enemies where you have to solve puzzles as a team. Now, there's a huge amount of custom levels and content in here, but you can also play the full campaign levels on many of the servers. That means material like Opposing Force and Blue Shift, the expansions of Half-Life, or the original Half-Life game can just be fully played online or multiplayer, which is really awesome. Sven Co-op is similar to Half-Life. It has similar weapons, monsters and characters, but the difficulty is scaled up slightly to suit the new team play. So you'll see a lot of custom weapons and extremely upgraded HD HQ models in comparison to the original game, but it's on the same engine and it runs extremely smoothly. The levels are set as missions and they generally separate from each other with checkpoints based on the multiplayer environment. Many missions span several maps and some of them are collectively put together in a series. The aim of most of these levels is to reach the endpoint checkpoint or achieve some kind of objective. Obtaining a high score is not so essential to beat levels in this game, it's just part of the whole fun. Even though Half-Life's so old at this point, this game is still extremely popular and the amount of servers still aligned for it is a really large number. Number 2, Counter-Strike Nexon Studio. So we already started covering many of the old Valve games, so why not cover another game very similar to Sven Co-op, and that is Counter-Strike Nexon Studio, previously Counter-Strike Nexon Zombies. This is a free-to-play MMO FPS game which has competitive PvP and PvE action elements, including a lot of content from the original Counter-Strike game with all new game modes, map creation functions, weapons, and the main feature of this title, which is huge hordes of zombies. Now, I'm sure a lot of you who played the old Counter-Strike games, including 1.6 and Counter-Strike Source, will remember the Zombies game mode. Well, this game is based off the Counter-Strike 1.6 material of the original game, but on a whole new engine. So you'll see a lot of the same models and the exact same gameplay, but the game engine is a little bit different. Basically, this is based off Counter-Strike, and it pits you against the two separate teams, Ts versus CTs, but the main premise of this is the fact that you can play zombies. Basically, you have to cut down huge undead masses, hordes of zombies in both PvP and PvE flavors. You'll go head to head with other players, as the zombies are not AI controlled, it's basically team based. One team will be CTs and the other team will start as zombies. The one zombie that begins will then slowly and periodically infect the other side until there's only one survivor left. Whoever survives at the end of the round will be the winner. In the zombies game type, you can't really damage the zombies, your bullets basically just push them away or push them back, so it's extremely hard as a survivor to actually survive in this mode. But that's basically the classical fashion of Counter-Strike Zombies. But this is that feeling put in a standalone game. Number 1, Halo Infinite. How can I not feature the newest Halo title, Halo Infinite, which is basically the newest and most recent title in the legendary Halo series, which has returned recently with a brand new Master Chief campaign. But in this sense, we're actually talking about the breakout free-to-play multiplayer experience, which they've released as a standalone. The campaign's an actual DLC which you have to pay for as an add-on. In fact, we're talking about the Halo Infinite multiplayer, which is entirely free to play on Steam. This is a really awesome game mode which I've been playing recently for the past couple of weeks since it was released way back in November, and it's been super fun to play. Originally it only started off with a few humble game types because they released it in beta, but since then they've added a lot more game types. A game type which is reminiscent of Team SWAT, and game types like Fiesta where you spawn with randomized weapons. It's an extremely fun multiplayer experience with some new weapons which are completely different to a lot of the old Halo games that we've never seen or experienced before. The Halo Infinite multiplayer is really cool as they update it regularly with new armor sets, new seasonal events, and they have a really cool challenge hub where it lets you level up throughout the seasons. You can also purchase battle passes to get additional rewards and order skins from the store just like on Fortnite. Halo Infinite is extremely fun and it's definitely worth trying, especially since it's probably the first Halo game which is entirely free to play. Of course, if you want the campaign, you'll have to purchase that separately, which is just a single upgrade. And that concludes this month's free to play games in December 2021. But most of these games will be great fun to play in 2022, as the majority of them are actually brand new releases towards the end of this year. For more Minecraft videos and videos periodically on the top 10 free to play titles to check out, do subscribe to the channel, drop a like on this video, and tell me in the comments what your favorite game was out of the 10 featured in the list. Also, make sure to tell me any other free to play games on Steam which I failed to mention in this video that are worth checking out for other people. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. YouTube says 97% of you are not subscribed, so if you enjoyed the video, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications and slap the like button for more Minecraft mod videos like this one. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.